The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to August educational webinar, Flip the Fear on Food Allergies, with our guest speaker, Betsy Craig. I'm going to hold off for another minute or so that everyone gets on at 3 o'clock. So be patient, and we will get started in about a minute, and we will get started with our program. For those of you who've just joined us, we're giving about another minute, and then we will get started with our program, Flip the Fear on Food Allergies. And yes, you are on the right spot. This is the August educational webinar sponsored by Alluserv, and we will get started momentarily. Thank you. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining the Alluserv sponsored webinar this month called Flip the Fear on Food Allergies. Before we get started, some housekeeping tips. If you have any questions, please type them in. There's a questions area. In addition, any other questions that are not answered, we can follow up with as well, or you can send them to me. Again, my name is Marsha Diamond, and I'm the moderator for the August educational webinar, Flip the Fear on Food Allergies. The video for this and the certificate of participation will be available on Monday, August 24th at www.alluserv.com. And without further ado, let's get started. Flip the Fear on Food Allergies, very hot topic, seems to be ongoing, and there seems to be just a whole slew of truths and untruths out there, and today hopefully we'll get some clarity on that. We're very fortunate to have Betsy Craig, CEO of MenuTrinfo, with us, and today's webinar, which is sponsored by Alluserv, is going to have two major objectives: 5 top training tips to serve those with food allergies in any establishment, and how to prepare and pass an allergy audit. So without further, I'm going to turn the slides over to Betsy.
Thank you, Marsha, and thank you for allowing me to share what I know about food allergies with those of you on today's webinar and then those of you listening and learning afterwards. Just to start off, we're going to go through a little bit of an introduction, talk about nutrition and food allergy solutions, Food Allergy 101, make sure everybody on the webinar understands some of the very basics about food allergies. And then through the 5 top training tips, I will address policies, audits, how to pass an audit there, recipes, training, and standard operating procedures. We feel it's really important here at MenuTrinfo that our clients and our friends in the industry absolutely know all the different parts of successfully serving those with food allergies. And finally, we'll end with some resources and some Q&A. And I would remind you, as Marsha said, please feel free to go ahead and put questions in the type box, and we will get to them. I'll get to them as I can and as we go through. So my name is Betsy Craig. I do own and run a company called MenuTrinfo, and MenuTrinfo stands for Menu Nutrition Information. We are a startup company that began in northern Colorado. We've been in business 5.5 years now. We are lucky enough in this area to partner with FAIR. And FAIR is the Food Allergy Research and Education nonprofit organization in our country. They're an amazing resource. If you haven't been to their website, a number of times today I will point out wonderful tools on their website for you to use in your food service establishment. They're a great, passionate organization helping to serve those successfully with food allergies. So first, let's take a look at this cartoon, which is not too far from the truth. These days in food service, I do know it feels like exactly like this cartoon states. You've got a fish and a loaf of bread, and somebody wants to know, has the fish been tested for mercury? Somebody else says, I can't eat that, I'm vegan. And then, of course, we have someone that says, is that gluten-free bread? It's interesting. I have personally been in the food service industry since I was 15, and I am, that's a lot of years ago, 35 years ago, and I have never seen so many special diets ever before in the industry. And I'm sure some of you are nodding your head on that, because everyone I talk to feels the exact same way. It's all of a sudden, over the last few years, it's just really, really sprung up with special dietary needs. Our friends down at Disney have a statistic that they quote, and these are real numbers from a gentleman who is the head chef down at Disney to handle special diets. And in that amusement park and in that world, back in 2009, they would get approximately 330,000 special requests. Everything from gluten-free to gluten-sensitive to minor food allergies or food intolerances to major multiple food allergies. And we have seen those numbers just grow and grow, and they're just starting to stabilize out. If you can see, 2013, they were seeing about 650,000 requests, and last year they saw just above that. So it's finally starting to stabilize out, but it's still a massive amount of people coming in asking for special dietary needs. I will tell you that in 2015, this year, they just recently introduced special allergy-friendly menus, and they will be doing that in over 100 different establishments within their amusement parks and theme parks across the country. And one of the reasons they're doing that is so that they can better successfully serve that specific diner that has the special dietary needs. Also, to put it on perspective, just in 1 week, one summer camp week up in northern Colorado, a local college, University of Northern Colorado, out of 1,000 people on campus for an event, they had 148 special dietary needs. So we do say 1 to 2 out of every 10 is asking for something specific or special for their meal. And I'm sure you all face it on a daily basis. So let's talk for a few minutes about the nutrition side of this, because nutrition is absolutely key when it comes to food allergies. Providing the information, having the information at your fingertips, and being able to identify what numbers you need when you need them, be it for someone with a medical special diet or an allergy, any of those things. Having this information at your fingertips is a must in today's world. This is a nutritional chart showing the breakdown of the top macronutrients, but more to the point of what we're talking about today are the allergen charts. The idea of producing a chart in your establishment or any establishment that lists out the big 8 allergens. Also, there's a new chart out in the market that has to do with reverse ingredient lookup or reverse lookup. This is where you take your same recipes and you can figure out, say, where cinnamon is being used. And so if somebody comes in and is allergic to something other than the big 8, this particular chart is a wonderful tool that allows you the opportunity to serve those diners as well. So having an allergen chart of some sort in your location is super important when it comes to serving those with special dietary needs. We are going through a lot in our industry with what the FDA is saying about menu labeling and what they're going to require for restaurants for 20 or more locations to menu label. And of course, as we've seen with other things, when that happens in one part of our industry, be it restaurants, then it starts to water flow down into other sectors, be it healthcare, long-term care, in grocery stores, convenience stores. We're seeing it very, very regularly, water flow down, and everybody's starting to ask for the information. We are talking in this particular slide about third-party certification. You know, you have an option to run your nutritionals by yourself or go ahead and get some outside help. either with a registered dietitian in your establishment or your facility, or to outsource it. So lots of options for you when you look to identify nutritional information, but more importantly, as we're talking about today, identifying those big 8 allergens and how to handle food allergies. So let's just talk for a few moments, and I apologize if this is repeat for some. I know there are some on this webinar and watching later that could teach this, but we just like to make sure, I like to make sure everybody's got the baseline of what a food allergy is. So there are over 15 million Americans today with food allergies. It is a very, very serious public health issue. One of the things that we're seeing is 40% of children with food allergies experience a severe or life-threatening reaction. And of course, with children today, peanuts is the most common allergen. However, someone could have a reaction to up to 170 different items. But with the kiddos, we're seeing peanuts is absolutely #1. A food allergy reaction sends someone to the emergency room every 3 minutes. And it's pretty amazing that we're seeing over 200,000 emergency room visits a year just on food allergies. What is a food allergy? A food allergy is an immune system reaction. So what that means is the person's going to react through their immune system when they ingest sometimes even just a minuscule particle of the food that they are allergic to. It can become a sudden reaction, a severe life-threatening response, and that response is known as anaphylaxis. A moment ago, I referred to the big 8 allergens on that chart. Here in the United States, the big 8 allergens, as you see on the screen, represent 90% of food allergies today. In Europe, it's 14. In Canada, it's 12. But here in the U.S., we have the big 8. We are looking at adding one more. They're talking about making it the top 9 or the big 9. But as of today, we do have the big 8 allergens, and those consist of egg, milk, fish, wheat, shellfish, tree nuts, peanuts, and soy. So some of the most common symptoms that someone experiences if they have a food allergy and accidentally digest or ingest the particle that they are allergic to, they could have anything from minor to major reactions, and here to list just a few. These are the most common, but certainly not all inclusive of a list. I prefer this slide, which kind of lets you see visually what someone looks like when they have a food allergy reaction. And as you know there, the gentleman at the very top in the center, Will Smith, that is from a movie called Hitch, where he ingested a piece of shrimp, and under 2 minutes in the movie they showed him with that level of reaction, which made me happy because it took it from being sort of a funny joke to being no joke, and kind of drove home how fast an allergic reaction can happen. And if you've ever seen someone have an allergic reaction to food, you will never forget it. But as I said a moment ago, the reaction could be anything from mild to severe. One of the challenges is, especially with kids, it can become life-threatening and fatal very quick. On this particular slide, I'd like to share and show what is available to treat someone with a food allergic reaction. It's important to know that medication is the only way to reverse the food allergic reaction once it starts to happen. So that's why care and getting someone care right away is major. So let's move on to the 5 top training tips to serve those with food allergies pretty much in any establishment. So as I go through these, think in terms of what you're doing today in your food service environment and how you are accomplishing these items, or you might still need to put some of this in place. The first has to do with policy. When we talk about the parts of the food allergy plan, the P stands for policy. Every restaurant, every food service establishment, every environment that serves food in any way, shape, or form should have some written policy on how to serve those with special dietary requests. And your policy needs to include a plan and a process. So the plan is what you intend to do to properly and comfortably serve those with food allergies, and the process is how to play that out. So what is your standard operating procedure? What do you do in your establishment? We do like to remind people that giving anybody, a patient, a client, a diner, incorrect information can become fatal and horrific for the person with the food allergy. Along with the policy, we encourage everyone to provide a disclaimer which shares with your diners, guests, clients what you can and can't assure. People ask me regularly, how can you possibly serve somebody with a wheat allergy in a pizza shop? Well, there's certainly a way you can do it. You can do it with a closed or an enclosed salad where the diner with the food allergy is the one that actually opens the cellophane back off of the pre-made salad. And so therefore what they're eating can be fully self-contained. However, in that kind of establishment, we encourage people to have a disclaimer which talks about what's present. If you look at the bottom here, it talks about an allergy disclaimer, simply stating before placing your order, please inform us if a person in your party has a food allergy, and then going into what products are being used at your location. And please be aware that food allergies and celiac disease are now covered under the Americans with Disabilities Act, and I will get into that a little bit further under laws and legislation. But just like we could not refuse someone in a wheelchair for a disability they might have, we have to make every effort in food service to serve those people with special dietary needs as well. So here we go, our food allergies to disability. In most cases, a life-threatening food allergy will classify under the ADA Act. Food allergies may constitute a disability. Individuals with food allergies may have an autoimmune response to certain foods. And the bottom line is if there's any way you can serve the diner, you need to do so. And the case where this came out of at the end of 2014 is cited there, and that actually began up at a college in Massachusetts known as Lesley University. If you want to do a little background on that, that's where you'll find the information. Another piece of information when it comes to policy is at what point are you responsible to safely serve someone with a food allergy? And that comes down to when is someone put on notice. A few months ago, I was in New York speaking with an attorney who specializes in food allergy law, and what she was telling me is the moment the diner, guest, anybody acknowledges that they have a food allergy and shares it with a staff member, that location is legally on notice. And it doesn't matter if that staff member is the dining supervisor or someone in the dining room who's washing down tables. If they share the information, that location legally is on notice at that point. So having policies on how to handle that the moment someone tells you they have a food allergy is going to be imperative. Let's move on to step 2, part A for audit. Let's take a look at what audits can happen in the food industry around food allergies. We tell people to go ahead and look at 3 specific areas in preparation for an allergy audit. First is ordering and receiving. Next is menu suggestions and what your menu contains. And then the final is what can ensure safe service. So how can you safely serve those with special dietary needs, specifically a food allergy? As you see in front of you, this is a checklist off of the front page and the summary page of an allergy audit. And whether or not someone can pass or fail obviously is based on how many red fails we have versus green passes. But in an allergy audit, you want to look at 3 main areas the policy and procedure, as we just talked about. Then the back of the house, everything from what's the facility layout to how are you purchasing, how are you handling substitutions, how about receiving. Storage is a massive deal when it comes to food allergies, and making sure you store allergy-free and allergy-safe items on shelves that are marked as such and not below non-allergy-free items. I've seen many dry storage as well as cold storage where I'll walk in and they will do a great job of having an allergy-free area, but unfortunately the stuff they store above it on their metro shelf is leaking down and has allergy-containing product. An example I saw of that had to do with egg coming down on cold storage shelf most recently. So thinking in terms of setting a policy and then having a way to handle storing those food allergy items, no matter dry, cold, frozen, doesn't matter. It just needs to have its own area to stay safe. And then when you're in the audit form and going through an audit, it's absolutely looked at closely. Finally, on the front of the house items, we say reservation, although most audits might not have a reservation center, or you might not be taking reservations at your location. But let's say you're feeding a family, or you're feeding relatives of someone that's in your location. That might be a case where you're having to get information about people that are going to want to eat safely through your kitchen and through your food service establishment that you might not have the medical history on. And when we look at the front of the house, we look at everything from the moment someone steps in to where they're going to sit, to what they're going to order. Are there salad bars? Are there bar lines, hot or cold buffets? And then how are those being set up? Are all of your allergen items placed together? Are they scattered throughout your cold or hot buffet? Simply where you place something on the buffet can have a massive impact on those with food allergies. Since we have people from all over the country on this webinar, I'm going to just touch on a couple pieces of the law and legislation for food allergies in different parts. More and more we're seeing other states adopt this. However, having an allergen awareness poster is required in the states that you see there: Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New York, Minnesota, Maryland, and now Michigan. And that poster is available on FAIR's website. As I said, I would be sending you back to FAIR's website. You can go ahead and download it and print it for yourself there. And it is available in English and Spanish, but it is legislated in those areas, and more areas coming for sure on that. Right next to that, you see this: before placing your order, please inform the server if a person in your party has a food allergy. That menu language is required in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Westchester County, New York, and Michigan. And what's interesting is they felt it was necessary to include this verbiage because people were not necessarily self-identifying, thinking they could navigate the menu on their own, having a reaction, and then blaming and coming back and sort of going back at the food service establishment, expecting them to be accountable for what they didn't even know. So that's where that verbiage came from. There's also state mandated training. And in Massachusetts and Rhode Island were the first two states to mandate training. And they did this program in Massachusetts. It's a 22-minute video to teach about food allergens. And it's interesting that that was the first one out of the gate. It was the first state that did it. We're seeing more and more states introducing legislation, but only Michigan has passed it, and Virginia actually just passed it as well. In Michigan, they wanted to be ANSI accredited training, and in which MA isn't, but the others are. And in Virginia, they are right now determining which training will qualify. But in both Michigan and Virginia, they're saying that at least one person on all shifts need to be trained in food allergies. So more is coming on that. We are on the cutting edge of food allergy legislation. We're on the cutting edge of food allergy law, and that's why we're seeing more and more of it enacted. I apologize, that slide appears to be redundant. I've already spoken about that. So as I talked about mandatory posters, I just wanted to share with you what the posters look like both in English and Spanish. And as I said, all you have to do is go to this FAIR website and you can download them right from that FAIR website. If you want them printed out, you can come see our website. We can help you there. So covering our food allergy parts with the R, with recipes. And again, folks, we're about halfway through or so, maybe a little bit more. I just want to remind you to please feel free to go ahead and put questions up as you have the questions, and we will answer them towards the end. There'll be time for Q&A. But let's talk about the R for recipes. There used to be a time when people could creatively make dishes on the fly and not necessarily have to follow the recipe, and that's not the case at all anymore. It's extremely important that you have your recipes written, documented, the nutritionals done on them, the allergens done on them, and that printed recipes are always available. And again, as I was saying earlier, if you have someone that's under your care, and maybe if you're a facility and their family members come, maybe the family member has an allergy to cinnamon that you might not know about. So being able to identify what is in any dish is imperative to successfully serve those with food allergies. 90% are the big 8, but keep in mind 10% of the food allergies are not the big 8. So always check the recipe if asked or if on notice. So substitutions and recalls can happen. It's amazing. Unlabeled food allergens is the #1 cause of recalls in the U.S. And I watch the recalls, and I think we have anywhere from 1 to 10 a day every single day. It is also really interesting to know that vendors, your vendors and broadline distributors are not required to notify you if something's been recalled. That responsibility falls onto you or your nutritional partner, whoever you're working with. And so it's kind of, well, it's not kind of, it's very, very important that you sign up for recall alerts if you don't already have that system dialed in. USDA is fabulous about notifying people of recalls. I get 1 or 2 a day from them. Also back to FAIR. FAIR does recalls. They do them through Twitter, and they do them on their Facebook page, and then they also do straight emails. I was getting ready to speak up in Microsoft up in Washington back at the beginning of the year, and that morning is when the recall came out, or the notice came out, that cumin, the spice cumin, had peanuts in it. And it was interesting because I opened my talk by saying if anybody in the room is using cumin when you're cooking, it now can contain peanuts, which of course is one of the major allergens for kids. And that to please take a moment and notify people back in your food service establishments of that. And about half the room pulled out their smartphones at that moment. I lost them for a couple minutes, but it was well worth it. It was a crazy recall and a crazy scenario to have peanuts and cumin, but you just never know what's going to show up where. We encourage people to go ahead and have a system for what you're going to do if something's been recalled or an allergen is present. This next slide shows an aller card, which the aller card simply is a card that identifies the big 8 allergens and their alternate names. Amazingly enough, chicken of the sea tuna has casein in it, but it doesn't say milk. It says casein on the label. Things like barbecue sauce, commercial grade barbecue sauce, almost all have tree nuts in them. Worcestershire sauce will go ahead and have fish, of course. But if you don't know to look for the alternate names and you're only looking for the main names like milk or fish, you might miss the word salmon or the word tuna or the word casein. And that is why it's important to know the main names as well as the alternate names for the big 8 allergens. I will tell you that there is legislation that says manufacturers must use these big 8 names. However, that doesn't mean it's always done. So now we're just going to touch on training very, very quickly, as T in the word parts Training, I believe, is the most important part of the whole thing because you can have the best products, the most allergy-free products. You can have the most beautifully set up area with special tools and everything to make a great allergy-free meal. And if the staff doesn't know what to do, or they don't know that grabbing something with an allergen in it and introducing it through touching the plate on the allergen-free dish cross-contaminates, then it doesn't matter how much you've done to make that first dish safe for the food allergic diner. It's instantly gone. So training the staff, whether it be monthly through a poster training or a manager training or an online worker training, getting staff training on a super regular basis is what's going to make your program a lot more successful. We think it's really important, and I personally think it's really important to have training on a couple different levels. I think having manager training so that those in charge can help make the right policy, prepare for the audit, manage the storage, help prevent the cross-contact, that really falls to the key holders or the person in charge, as our food code says. However, if you don't have the rest of the staff on board, it's not going to work. You need to have everybody on board and keep training monthly or at least regularly to keep your food allergen-free for those that need it to be allergen-free. The last section that I'm going to talk to here is the standard operating procedure area of our food service establishments. So there's a number of things that I will touch base with here and then probably elaborate on a couple. But this is where we get to show that we're really, really good at the hospitality part of our business. By providing and taking care of those with food allergies, we just need to follow a couple simple steps and we can serve pretty much anybody. Number one is read those labels, and I talked a moment ago about alternate names. Here is where the Food Safety and Modernization Act, which was enacted January 1st of 2006, stated that if it contains one of the big 8, they're supposed to use that big 8 name and identify that in the ingredient panel. Now they can identify it in the ingredient panel along with the ingredients or at the end like that where it says contains soy. That is the legitimate way to do it as well. We do like to point out that made in a facility that processes is purely a voluntary option. It is not mandated, so it's quite important to know that if it's on there, it's purely because the manufacturer is choosing to put made in a facility that also processes whatever, like peanuts. We see that all the time, especially on chocolate and dessert products. But that is the number one spot to go ahead and get the allergy information to safely serve those with food allergies, especially if it's one of the big 8. Let's talk for a moment on cross-contact, because cross-contact when it comes to food allergies is different than cross-contamination. Cross-contact has to do with touching one particle to the next. Cross-contamination means being introduced to your food service establishment and having it contaminated. The other thing is cross-contamination or contamination has to do with food safety, temperature controls, and diseases that come from chicken not being cooked to the fullest temperature versus cross-contact like in this fryer. This fryer is a great example. So I've been teaching Allertrain for so many years now, and I will tell you that it's now finally happening where we can teach an entire class and not have one person who believes that you can cook something long enough to heat out the gluten or heat out the allergen. But a few years ago when we first started teaching, people would make fries in the same oil that they cook shrimp in and didn't understand why that wasn't a good option. There is no temperature hot enough for oil and no amount of time to cook for long enough to cook out the allergens. And keep in mind, on a food allergy, just a particle could put somebody in the hospital or kill them. So it's important to know there's no temperature hot enough or time to cook long enough to happen One of the examples I heard that makes this really clear is if I were to take a chicken breast and put it on a flat top and just start to grill it, I could leave it on that flat top for 4 hours. And when it starts with the protein chicken. It's the protein poultry there. Put it on the flat top. 4 hours later, if I pull it off and I try to eat it, it's still going to have the protein chicken. It's still going to be poultry. And if that's what I'm allergic to, it doesn't matter how long I cooked it, I'm still going to have a reaction. Same idea in a fryer. So one of the things that we like to tell people is if you're going to go ahead to be such a successful provider of food allergy items, allergy-free items, how can you identify them? What's the easiest way to identify them? Can you start identifying the next shift at dinner? Well, there's a couple things you can do right away today that would identify those food allergy-free meals and put the information back to the diner. So a great example is using a different plate or a double plate for the special dietary meal. Now, if at this point you're rolling your eyes and you're thinking, well, we're going to have to buy a whole nother set of dishes because we're going to use double plates every third plate, well, then you might be more the frill pick kind of location where identifying a particular allergen-free item is done through a color frill pick. The other thing to prevent cross-contact is delivering the food. If you're in a setup where you're delivering through a tray and tray service, keep in mind you don't want two plates next to each other, one that's allergen-free and one that contains the allergen. Next to each other, we have cross-contact that can happen. A lot of times we recommend using a plate cover, something as simple as saran wrap. I always say foil is the very best friend of anybody who has food allergies because foil can create the barrier that's needed to keep that plate safe for those with special dietary needs. So these are just pointing out major cross-contact pitfalls or areas that are absolutely the fail areas. When it comes to an audit, these are areas that very few get right off the bat. They might get it to show the auditor, but then 10 minutes later you can find somebody breaking one of these rules, which is again why the training is important and reviewing over and over with the staff. So first has to do with hands. We encourage washing, drying hands with a clean towel, doing normal food safety protocol of washing for 20 seconds, drying properly, and then gloving up before you go to make a special dietary need meal. We have locations that I've been at where they actually have whole separate areas where they prepare only allergen-free meals. I've also been in kitchens that are so small that they're lucky they have room to do just about anything. So what they do, this one kitchen I saw do was amazing. They have a purple steamed tray that's an inch up all the way around. It's a full sheet pan tray, and it's purple on the inside. It's coated purple. Purple is the food allergy color, and within that tray is where they prepare the food allergy meal, allergy-free meal, because nothing can jump up over and on, and that surface stays clean and safe for the food allergy diner. Keeping in mind utensils and thermometers are easy areas for cross-contact. Thermometers need to be washed and wiped down. Just using a sani cloth is not enough. And I always tell the chefs we train, don't just wipe that thermometer off on your coat. We know it's not going to work. You can't use the bar rag you use for everything else. You have to clean and rinse. There are thermometers out there that contain, and some health departments let you have them and some don't. Depends upon your zip code and what your health department says. But there's thermometers out there that have a liquid that will take off the particles on a thermometer. And if you're allowed to use those, that's by far the safest. Keep in mind kitchen surfaces, covering dishes, different ID methods. We went through some of those, and receiving and storage. Those are the areas where cross-contact absolutely is the biggest pitfalls that we see. And we always say don't make a fatal mistake. So this is the part where we talk about using clean oven racks, using clean dishes, using clean baking pans. And if they're not totally clean, then simply using a barrier to keep the product safe, keep the food safe. Craft paper, deli paper, foil, those sort of things can be a fabulous barrier. Special pans. We're seeing more and more fry pans that have purple handles on them when we're going out to do the audits, because people want those particular items to only be used to serve and prepare food allergy-free meals. The last couple slides I have here are just some resources about a monthly poster program that we do, that we've been really, really blessed to do, where it shows up every month and you get to train. Things like this are really the way to separate yourselves from a good location to a great location when it comes with food allergy training. Being able to go through the training tips and then having your staff sign off that they understand never hurts. So at this time, I think I'm handing it back to you, Marsha.
Okay.
For Q&A.
So a couple of questions we've gotten is, do allergens wash off the dishes in the dish machine?
That's a great question. Ultimately, yes, they do. We've been trying to get some of the major providers to put that in writing and as a statement. They're very hesitant to do that. All the medical doctors say if you use hot water and soap, it will remove the allergen. Most of the places that want to get serving those with special dietary needs down and get an A+ 100% every time, do an extra wash in a 3-compartment sink and just make sure.
Okay. Another question is, I know you mentioned about the audit, so that having a checklist to do a lot of this stuff, it makes sense. So everything from your type of menu posters, changing it up. Do you suggest doing any kind of testing of your employees, like quick questions, things like that, to make sure?
So questions that's a great idea for the employees. Doing questions, either utilizing the questions through, if you've done training class, and being able to print off those questions and reuse those same questions. There's also quizzes on that FAIR website I keep talking about. Like I said, they've got a lot of resources that you can use that don't cost you anything. You just need to go to their website and print information out from them, as well as that monthly program. Having a refresher each month to drive those allergen-free points home gives you an extra level of confidence for certain.
The other thing is, after you clean that flat top, is it still allergen? Is it allergen safe at that time, or once a flat top is cross-contaminated, can you use it?
So yes, you can use it. What you need to do is just make sure to clean it off. So whatever your protocol and whatever your procedure is for cleaning, as long as it includes some sort of agent to either scrape it down or clean it down and then section it off. You know, I don't know how many on the call know like a Mongolian grill, but I've worked with a couple brands that do that, and Mongolian grills do this big, huge open cook space, and they can very successfully serve those with special dietary needs simply by scrubbing down the grill, sectioning off an area, and cooking within that area. They usually put barriers down so that the food can't cross-contact that way through the liquid transferring or any of the items transferring. And I've seen it done over and over and very successfully.
Okay. And so training, designated equipment, and tools that are purple, visual posters, what else? If you had to give your 5 tips to sum it up, to summarize in the last, give me, out of the 5 you said, give me the top 2 out of all those.
Out of the 5 I said, the top 2 I would say would be number 1, training, and number 2, practice. Practice what to do. Practice, yeah, and be able to handle the different, gluten-free has really brought food allergies to the front of everyone's mind, because until gluten-free got so crazy in this world and every other, like 1 out of every 10 diners was asking for gluten-free dining, people with food allergies were mostly almost embarrassed to even say it, but they couldn't go out or they couldn't be taken care of without sharing about their food allergy. Well, gluten-free has made it really easy for people to say, hey, this is what I need. I need to eat this way. I need to eat. And it's one of the reasons some of the brands that let you go down the line and pick the items to go into your meal are so super successful, because then the person with the special preference or the special dietary need can get their needs met right there, and they don't have to be called out as, you know, anything other than just a normal diner in that environment.
Okay. Okay. Another question: the flat top that I scrape the grill, this would take away the gluten allergy, correct? The flat top. I guess the question was if the flat top and I scrape the grill, this would take away the gluten allergy. Is that what you're saying?
If your protocol and the way you clean your grill top is with like one of those scrub, I know they're made by 3M and there's a holder for it, or there's one you use that's kind of got on a stick to scrub down the grill straight to get it to the grill surface, yes.
Okay.
You can scrub your grill to where the grill is clean enough that all the particles are removed, then yes, the gluten is removed as well. But you have to be careful and not to reintroduce gluten at any point. So you don't cook, you don't toast a hamburger bun right next to it, or pick that same hamburger bun up and take it across the grill, across the clean area, because that's where your cross contact can happen.
So if you do have a budget and you do have a lot of people who have some allergies, whether you're in healthcare food service, whether it's senior dining, patient, or retail, would you recommend having designated, you have enough of a population, having designated equipment, production equipment, even a combi oven of any type, a grill top that's designated for that to prevent any cross-contamination?
Absolutely. There are a lot of establishments that simply go the step of having a separate oven that's nothing but gluten-free, wheat-free oven that's a countertop oven, or a toaster that only does gluten-free bread, or an area. If it's a large part of your population, finding those tools, those great tools out there that can accommodate, it's what's going to make it possible for you to successfully serve these folks. The other thing is you don't need to have a whole separate kitchen and match it up exactly, because you're going to do 1 to every 10 meals is going to be a special dietary meal, maybe 2 to 10. It depends upon the population. So instead of needing, a 20-gallon bain-marie to make the soup, maybe you're just using a stock pot that's designated as only allergen-free to make soup.
And this is something you would implement, right away. Do not wait till you are asked to do something like that. This is something you would be proactive with in your facilities, whatever you work with, because you could see the growing challenge of this issue. Is that correct?
It's completely correct. So one of the things that we teach regularly is go ahead and take a big old plastic bin and put on the side allergen-free. We tell people it doesn't cost much money to get purple duct tape and a purple marker, and then on the side of your stock pots that you're only going to use for allergy-free food, you go ahead and identify, whether you write it straight on there or you use the tape to identify it, just like a purple handle on a fry pan. The same idea on a stock pot, the same idea on a container that you store the food in the dry storage, but have the container, as I said, write something on the outside that says allergen-free or gluten-free, and make sure there's a lid. I went and did a site visit, audit visit at a Mexican restaurant in Denver, and they did a great job with gluten-free. They wanted to make sure they were doing the right thing, wheat and gluten-free, wheat for the allergies and gluten-free for those diners. And super excited about, they had this big menu, they were so proud, and they showed me where they were keeping their spices, and their spices they were using for some of their food was this red spice, and I kept seeing these white specks. Well, you know what I saw? I saw flour dripping from 2 shelves above into this spice. The other thing is all of their dishes came with a side of rice, which is fabulous. Gluten-free rice, not a problem, it's all great. But they were flavoring their rice with chicken stock And the third ingredient was barley in the chicken stock, or chicken base, excuse me. And so keep in mind, it might not come out and say wheat, but barley is gluten. So you've got to know the alternate names to successfully serve those. You just have to.
Right. And one final question, two final questions. Does allergen-free mean free of all 8 top allergens? Shrimp with no batter would now be wheat and egg-free allergies, but is it allergy-free? So I'll repeat that question.
No, I totally understand. Believe it or not, I totally understand what they're asking. So when we say allergen-free, it's allergen-free per diner. So if I'm allergic to seafood, my allergen-free meal contains no seafood, versus someone that might have multiple allergies, that might be their allergen-free dish. And I refer back to Disney on this because they have done it, as well as other locations, restaurants I've seen, where they're offering these menus that instead of saying, here's a straight menu and you can have these 3 things, they're giving a menu that might be a peanut-free menu, or a menu that might be a wheat-free menu, or super common today, here's your gluten-free menu. And so that's the sector that you're trying to accommodate. And one of the reasons Disney went to that is because they were going tableside every single time somebody had a special dietary need. The protocol for the Disney Corporation was to go tableside and work with the diner. Well, they were spending almost as much time out in the dining room as they were back in the kitchen. And so this is a go-to fix to accommodate those people. So allergen-free for there might be peanuts for one person and might be seafood for another. But having the flexibility, they're both called allergy-free, so it certainly gets confusing.
Thank you. So, and the final question is, so if I handle the shrimp in the purple pans, can I use the purple pans for seafood allergy with the next diner?
If you wash it in between.
So washing does designate and will give you clarity as long as it's washed in between.
Yes. Cleaning and sanitizing in between, cleaning and scrubbing down, using a cleanser, that sort of thing in between, you bet. If you have someone that's allergic to shrimp and you prepare their meal, and then the next person is not allergic to shrimp but allergic to something else, then if there's no there's no conflict in the allergens, you can still use the same items. That's the idea with having the purple kits and the purple, like you've got a great picture of these purple products up here. What that does is it lets you know that there are places that won't let any of the big 8s happen on the purple because they have so many allergies. The only way they can handle it is to have nothing of those 8 touch there. There are also a lot of places that say they're free of the big 8 except for fin fish because they need the protein to complete the meal. But that purple color is the go-all, end-all, be-all. When you said before, what are the 2 top tips, I think I'd take my second tip back and say, make sure you have some purple stuff.
Okay. Well, I think that's it for the questions. So once again, I wanted to thank you, Betsy. Also, the video will be available on Monday, and the certificate. I know some of you asked me for the download of the PowerPoint. Betsy requested that if you want that, please contact her directly to discuss with her, and I will put back on Betsy's contact information at this point. So
thank you very much, Marsha. Thank you.
I'm going to put that right back on. But also, in the survey, you can tell me that you want the information, and I will send that to Betsy as well. You'll get a survey when you get off. So here's Betsy's information as well, and let me just give you that. And thank you all for joining us. Hopefully you walked away with less fear and more action and implementation, and any way we can help you, either Betsy or myself, we'd love to, and have a great afternoon and enjoy the rest of your summer. Thank you for joining us today. Again, thank you, Betsy, for all your knowledge.
Thank you.
And making it a safer place for this world.
Oh, thanks, Marsha. Bye-bye now.
Bye.